Hey guys, Stealth here. Happy Monday. Welcome to the War Room. Today's War Room, I wanted to talk about virtual reality, and not so much the virtual reality in the sense that we know it now, which means the whole big VR goggles, but something that was discussed in an episode of Black Mirror that I watched last week. Now, Black Mirror, in case you're not familiar with the show, they are. They're hard to describe, really. It's a show that displays what can happen if we take technology too far. So, for example, if everything becomes something that we have to like or share, and if we start to rate people on the amount of likes that they're getting, how would society look then? That is something that is Black Mirror. Now, Black Mirror also deals with semi-science fiction in that sense. They are what-if scenarios plus modern technology taking one step too far. So, the episode that I watched last week was about virtual reality gaming. And normally, when you think about virtual reality, you think about these huge, unwieldy goggles that you have to put on. And that's pretty much the extent that we know now. But what if we took that step one further? What if we made, and that's what this episode pitched, what if we made a computer slash brain interface? And this is something along the lines of a small chip embedded in your brain, something embedded in your neck, or whatever, so long as it lets you talk to the computer. What would happen then? How would gaming look then? Because what you're going to be seeing, and what happened in the episode, is that this guy he got some sort of thing in his neck, some sort of neural link, and then he was brought into a villa. You know, one of these old, spooky, creepy villas that you usually see in horror survival games. Those things. The villa itself was just a house. There was nothing special about it. The only thing was that the thing that was in his neck, so the neural link, was constantly scanning his brain patterns. And was constantly, and this is where it gets a bit spooky, digging through his memories. Now, this is definitely the science fiction area, because I don't believe that that's technology we have now. But imagine for a moment that we have. So, you have a computer system, or a game in this sense, digging through your skull, looking for the stuff that you're afraid of. Now, why would it want to do that? Well, let's say that you're playing a standard horror game currently. If you do that, then most of the time you can predict what's going to happen. And most of the time, the game will not actually play into your fears, exactly. The game will dig into general fears. So, for example, fears of spiders, or fears of darkness, fears of being left alone. Stuff like that, things that most people have on a basic level. But if something digs around in your head, in your memories, and goes looking for trouble, then what happens with this neural overlay, or this neural interface, and this is something that the episode pitched, they said, okay, we're going to look around in your skull, in your brain, and we're going to find what you're afraid of. And this is something that the computer system did all by itself. It wasn't any human intervention. And when I say digging around, I'm not talking about some sort of scalpel actually digging around, but it's a computer system that's basically scanning. So that's what they did. They just kept scanning, they just kept looking at what this guy was afraid of. And then they started overlaying those fears onto what he experienced. So he was just alone in this villa, and suddenly, out of the blue, he sees that the lights are going on and off in a painting on the wall. Of course that wasn't happening, but to him it was bloody real. And with that, he just got scared out of his mind, because that's something that doesn't happen. Now, did it happen? No. It just didn't, because by all extents and purposes, it was a standard painting. It just didn't have any special effects to it. It was the neural link feeding information into his brain. It was neural link feeding information about what he could possibly be afraid of, and then acting on that. That is what they were using, and that is exactly where the trouble started. Because let's just go with this assumption that this is something that is possible. This is something that we are going to be getting at some point. An interface link between a computer and a human. And let's say that initially it's going to be used for gaming. I think it would be great, because on the one hand you have all of this stuff inside your brain that isn't generally challenged, in the sense that a game can only hit you up on so many different areas. I mean, if I want to have a strategy game, I'm going to play a war game. If I want to build a civilization, I'm going to play Civ 6. If I want to have action where I'm constantly working towards getting a new objective, in the sense of a new goodie or a new ship in my case, I'm going for all the warships. But so far, there are very, very few games that touch on every area. Very few games that actually hit you up, as I call it, on all these different elements. And that's okay, that's just the current state of it. But what if, for example, you're playing a war game, and the game thinks, this guy knows what he's doing, we're gonna crank up the difficulty. We're gonna suddenly, I don't know, invent new units, or somehow make the game a lot more adaptable to you. There are some games that do this, surely, but not on all these different levels. And that's what a brain interface link can do. But here are the problems with that. At least the problems that I've been able to find. And let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on those, and just feel free to add them down in the comments, because it's a really, really interesting discussion. Because let's say that if you're gaming now, usually time flies by already. But if everything is in your mind, then how far does that extend? And by this I mean everything's in your mind, alright? So you have this brain interface, and the computer is just spinning things for you. It's spinning things along the lines of you're looking at, I don't know, you're looking at a painting, or you're going through this horror villa, and the game is just letting you know that there are, I don't know, vampires around or whatever, creepy crawlies. What happens then is that that is something that's not actually there, it's being implanted in your brain. How difficult would it be for a computer system to just speed up time, or speed up your perception of time? So you're thinking that you've only been interfaced, or you've been experiencing this game or this reality for, I don't know, 20 minutes. Whereas in fact you've already been going for hours. Or the other way around, where you think that you've been playing for several dozen hours, and in fact you've been only interfaced for 5 minutes. That would leave you totally devastated, in the sense that let's say that you want to do a quick game for, you have to get off to work or to college or whatever project you're running. Normally you just think, yeah, well, I'm gonna do, I don't know, one quick match of Wargame, or a couple of quick matches in World of Warships, and it'll be okay. And then you have exact control over time. That is, not counting the whole I need to win inside 30 minutes thing. I mean, that's a hard cap, it's a hard limit. There's no game that's gonna outlast 30 minutes if you set the timer to 30. But you're usually not too exhausted. I mean, sure, Wargame can be pretty exhausting, but most other games, not so much. But now, just before you head off to work, you're gonna do one quick simulation run, using your neural interface. That could leave you absolutely exhausted, even after a run of a couple of minutes. So that is one thing that could be a problem. But how about the neural thing, let's say in the sense of fear? If it's seeking out what you fear most and constantly presenting you with it, then wouldn't that be the ideal form of torture? Because you could just snap one of those chips onto people if you wanted information out of them. And you could just have them, or have the computer go through their mind and go looking for what they fear most, and then constantly present them with it. And surely, initially they might think, well, this isn't too bad. They're gonna probably boost a massive amount of adrenaline to get into the fight or flight response. And then what? Because they're just gonna keep going, and do you let them keep going until they get a heart attack out of their own fear? I think that that would be the ultimate form of torture. And this also brings me to another point. Let's say that if everything is in your mind, and an NPC, for example, hits you, then does that hurt? I mean, there is a significant link between what you experience and your body, let's say your bodily responses, let's call it that. There's always this link between I think I'm cold, or I'm cold, so I'm going to shiver. That's something that we do automatically. So what if this brain interface is thinking, or letting you think, that you are in fact shivering? Or that you are in fact cold? Will you start to shiver, even if you're warm? It can make your mind go completely haywire. And by extent of that, let's say that you are in fact getting attacked by an NPC. Let's say something along the lines of Fallout or Skyrim. Would that actually hurt? Would you like it to hurt? Suppose it is a setting, then you could easily say, well, I'm not too interested in experiencing the pain. I don't like that gameplay element. I'm going to turn that off. Could you? Would you? Wouldn't that just take away from the game? Isn't the whole point of the game to get a new experience, including the pain that comes with it? So these are all sorts of questions that I was wondering about. And ultimately, I think that it can lead to controlling people. Because if you can make it a game, then you can also use it for other purposes. The point is that this neural link can take your brain for a complete mindfuck. It can make it see things that aren't actually there, or the other way around. It can make it see things, or not see things that are there. So, for example, you think that you're still playing the game, and you see some sort of NPC that you have to kill. Let's say we're going with a modern FPS shooter. Let's say you're in some sort of interface that resembles Arma 2 or Arma 3. So what you do is that you see an enemy combatant. You pick up a weapon and you shoot him. That's usually how the game works. But what if you're not actually shooting someone in-game, but in real life? I mean, sure, it may be far-fetched, but these technologies are progressing rapidly. And I think that at some point, stuff like this will become reality. Because already, with performing-enhancing drugs, or performance-enhancing drugs, or a mix of those with psychedelics, you can already get some really, really weird effects out of people. So just taking that one step further, I don't think it is at all impossible to have something like that happening. And let's just say that we're going to go back to the fear simulator thing, the horror game. If you get a trauma out of the game, is that possible? I mean, let's say you're playing something along the lines of Alien Isolation. That can be a pretty scary game to some. That is, however, unlikely to give you a trauma. You're not that likely to wake up screaming at night thinking, oh my god, it's that bloody game again. It's just not that likely. So, if something like that doesn't really work on us, could the neural interface game be any difference? Could it be so that you're actually so bloody scared that this is going to cause you to have some sort of, some sort of trauma out of it? And if so, do you have to disavow legal liability to that? So, it's not just, let's say, reality issues. It's also legal issues that are going to come with it. Anyway, the link to that episode, insofar as I can link to it, is in the description down below if you want to learn more about that. Black Mirror is a bit of a weird show. It has no consistent cast. A season, well, insofar as you can call it a season, the season lasts for about 4 episodes, and an episode lasts anywhere between 50 minutes, and let's say hour and 15 minutes. I think that's the maximum I've seen so far. They are always with a different cast. There's no 2 episodes that have the same cast. And it is just constantly challenging the modern perceptions of technology. It is on Netflix, it is available there, at least in my country, Netherlands. So if you want to watch something like that, be prepared for a weird show. This is not something like House of Cards, Game of Thrones, Westworld, something along those lines. It is completely different. It is, however, very, very interesting. So if you want to have a look at something that is completely different and that challenges you to think different, then be sure to have a look at that show, because it is just that good. Anyway, what else happened last week? I came across an interesting article that British warships are doing away with their Harpoon missiles. From what I read, the Harpoon missiles themselves are outdated, in the sense that they're basically out of their warranty period, and they can no longer be fired safely. Now, these wouldn't be specifically newsworthy, in the sense that weapon systems go out of date or out of their useful period any time of the week. But they usually get replaced. The British warships, not so much. I mean, it's not that they're taking the British warships out of service. Absolutely not. But it's that these British warships no longer have any long-range anti-ship capability. And mind you, I'm talking about the surface-to-surface warfare. So, let's say ship-to-ship missiles. They are not going to get replacements for their harpoons. Now you could say, well, okay, that's weird enough, but let's say that most ships still have a helicopter. They can also fire missiles that way, right? The Seaskua. No. The Seaskua is also taken out of service. So here we have British frigates, British destroyers that are armed with harpoons right now, and they can launch helicopters that are armed with the Seaskua, unless I'm mistaken there, but I believe that's the weapon system that they're still using. So at least they have two different ways of long-range standoff attack, or long-range standoff against enemy warships. They're going to completely lose that capacity. At least for 2 years. Because that is when a replacement system for the Seaskua is going to be introduced. So what does that mean? Well, the British warships can still provide long-range anti-air. They still have long-range interceptor missiles, but they no longer have long-range anti-ship capability. And this is where it gets really weird. In order to deal with enemy shipping, these ships would have to rely on their main gun. I say again, they would have to rely on their main gun. That, I believe, is a 5.25 inch. And that means that we're basically back to the naval era of, let's say, late 50s. So just before naval missiles got introduced. It is just ridiculous. It is because, at least that's what the article said, it's because the British economy is doing so poorly that they cannot afford to buy new missiles for their ships. And of course the Navy's up in arms, because they're going, what the hell? We no longer can guarantee the safety of the British continent like this. Defending the island without longer range anti-ship missiles is going to be really difficult. Now keep in mind that they're not doing away with all long-range capability. That's not the case. They do still have, for example, their submarines, which are very, very capable anti-surface platforms. But not having your ships with anti-ship missiles is something that I find very, very unusual. And I'm not exactly sure what the long-range implications will be. I mean, we're not actually in a shooting war with anyone. But it's still unusual. And several of the Navy brass already warned, saying, look, we can no longer go up against, for example, Russia or any of the other massive naval powers that are indeed keeping their navy up to date and well equipped. If China does want to go to war for some reason or another, then it's going to be really difficult keeping them at bay if you don't have missiles on your surface ships. Because you're basically reducing surface ships to anti-air platforms, which is of course part of their job description already. And normally they don't even need that in peacetime operations. In peacetime operations they would possibly go for, I think, 50 cals if you're doing anti-piracy operations. But usually nothing bigger than that. I mean, you don't fire a harpoon at a small raft that contains pirates off the coast of Somalia. It just doesn't work. It's way too expensive of a solution. And the thing is that now they no longer have that capacity, or they're no longer going to. And the implications, I don't know, could mean a more aggressive show of force of Russian ships, perhaps. Don't know yet. But that is something that definitely a weird news article, and quite concerning, I'd say. Let me know what your thoughts are on that in the comments below. Anyway, moving on to Wargame. We have 2 Wargame streams coming up this week, and no, they're not my streams. They're streams by the developers. Monday, that's today, we're going to have a Finland stream showing off the Finnish units. And Thursday we're going to have a Yugoslavia stream showing off their units. It can always be found on the Twitch for Eugen, and I'll link to that in the description down below. They start, I believe, at 6 Central European time. And what exactly that works out to, I'm not exactly sure. But I'll be sure to add an event tracker so you can have a look at what that is in your own time zone through that link in the description. Just click it and it'll tell you what time it'll be for you. And I'm pretty interested in especially Finland as far as units go. I gotta say I'm not too interested in Yugoslavia. I had a look at the units last week, and no, I haven't seen the decks yet, but from what I've seen in the descriptions on the blog post, they have some interesting units, but nothing too stellar. To me, they're just another Red 4 nation. Finland is different. They have a lot of good infantry, a lot of reconnaissance infantry apparently, and seemingly they're also going to have a wide array of mortars, as well as a pretty large limitation on the amount of tanks. Seems that they don't have too many tanks, so they could be very, very good in infantry warfare, but lacking the firepower to back them up. That is from what I've been able to gather from the blog post. Blog post also linked in the description down below. As for the rest, I know as much as you guys, so we're going to have to just look at the stream tonight and see exactly what they have in store for us. What kind of units are going to be coming out, what kind of things we can expect. And once that is known, I'll probably put up a video outlining and using screenshots of those units as far as they are available. So just have a bit of a discussion about Finland. And potentially doing the same thing about Yugoslavia after this stream has completed on Thursday. Other games that I've been playing last week, Transport Fever, getting better at the game. Once you realize that it's a demand-driven economy, then it suddenly makes a whole lot more sense. And you know how to boost production, you know how to work the system, you know how to make lines that are currently not profitable because they're simply not transporting enough profitable. And it just becomes a more pleasant experience. But there is one thing with Transport Fever that is a bit weird. After I think 2 to 3 hours of play, the game just starts to get a massive drop in FPS. In the sense that my system just does, I don't know, 3 frames per second, if that. And this is something that is supposedly being looked at. It's a memory leak somewhere. But it's really, really annoying because you have to close down the game, start the game back up, and then you can continue playing. So I really hope that the devs are going to be working on that. As for World of Warships, that is still my main game at the moment, and I'm getting into the German battleships. Now initially I thought that the battleships were a bit boring, too slow to maneuver, not really interesting along the sense of it takes them forever to get from one side of the map to the other. They only fire every 20 seconds, every 30 seconds, depending on the make and model. It's just not very exciting gameplay. Versus, for example, my Tier 9 Neptune light cruiser, which can fire every 4.4 seconds. Sure, it's a way smaller caliber, but at least it makes for more interesting gameplay. But I found the German battleships to be very, very pleasant. They're really nice. So I'm making my way up that tier. Currently at Tier 5. And finally, last week I went to Fantastical Beasts and Where to Find Them. This is the new how do we describe that? Harry Potter-esque movie. It's basically set in the same universe, just not in England, but in America this time around. Plays in 1926, and it's nice. It was a good movie. Great music, very, very good cast. So if you are still looking to go to the cinemas anytime soon, have a look at that movie. I think you'll enjoy it. As for this week, we're going to continue with Civilization 6. The search for oil will go on. World of Warships, I have a really nice replay coming up, and of course the Wargame videos on the new nation packs. Not sure when they're going to be coming out yet. I'm not sure about any kind of release date. But I think, and this is something that we basically brainstormed with the guys on the TeamSpeak, if they are putting out their videos on them now, then we're probably getting them sometime next month. And sometime next month would probably also translate to before Christmas, so that they can still join the Christmas Steam sale. And of course with that, hope for an influx of newer players. If I was Eugen, that would be my play. I want to get more players to get my game at a discount, keep the community alive, and keep going with the game. Because it still seems to be a very, very major element for them. At least from what I've been able to tell. Way more important than active aggression. And that's it for this week. War Room has concluded. You are all dismissed. Have a good week. Thank you for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are on the British warships, on the whole neural interface thing, and on the Yugoslavian and Finnish units. We're going to be seeing those in detail this week. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon for more videos.